Our dreams motivate us. Our vision provides us direction. Joy and fulfillment actually come from letting the dream we love determine the path we take. Happiness is actually born out of a dream that's larger than us. I was doing a lot of volunteer work, and one of the places that I was working is that there is a Christian organization that does foster care, and they're it's like if kids have failed in several homes, these parents step in, and they're one of the last places, that these kids get to go. And they brought me in to do a conference, and it was just small, and we had these great foster kids sitting in a U, and the foster parents were sitting behind them. And what I was there to do is to teach the kids to dream. And it's so much fun. It's the most fun thing that I ever get the privilege of doing, is to teach a child to dream. And these children were anywhere from 8 to 10. And they had been through just horrible, horrible things in their lives. They'd, been beaten and abused and not fed well, and I mean, just the worst things that you can imagine. So, and they were all not doing well in school, and they're not doing well, just about in any area of their life. And so I've been brought in to teach them to dream. And I asked them if they could be anything that they wanted in the whole wide world, what would they dream of being at age 35? I mean, they could have any dream. I'm their fairy godmother, and they can have anything that they want. Well, these kids got very excited about this, and they were writing, as fast as they can, and one little boy broke his lead and, had to have more. I mean, he was very, very enthusiastic. So when it came time to share their dreams, I said, who wants to share your dream? And he was just like, I do. Now, this was a 9-year-old little boy, but he was about the size of 7.5, maybe. He was a very small little guy. And he stood up, and he was just trembling. He had his dream paper in his hand, and he said, I want to be a Denver Bronco. I was like, that is an awesome dream. What would you need to do today in order to be a Denver Bronco later? And he was like, I'd have to eat good stuff, because I gotta get big and strong to be a Denver Bronco, right? I was like, yes. He said, I would have to learn how to read, because Denver Broncos need to know how to read, right? I said, yes. He said, I have to learn math, because Denver Broncos have plays, and they have to run and stuff, and they probably have to know some math. And I said, yes. He's like, I gotta get to school. You see how school had totally transformed in that moment, because he had something that he wanted, that he was excited about, that school could help him actually get to. Now, it's break time, and I go into the little break room to grab a little glass of tea. Have you ever seen really ticked off Christian foster parents? It is not a pretty sight. These two foster parents of this little boy came in that break room, they closed that door behind them, and they said, how dare you? We brought you here because we thought you understood something about children. We cannot believe that as much pain as that little boy has been through, as many times as his heart has been broken, you allowed him once again to pick a dream that you know is never going to happen. He's way too small to ever be a Denver Bronco. How could you? And I remember taking a deep breath, because you have to in those situations, and saying, wait a minute, who said that we couldn't have any dream that we wanted? All we need is something that excites us, to give us a reason to do the right thing today. We're going to find our way as we go. When I was a little girl, my uncle brought me a little plastic red fire cap, had a bell on the front of it. And I mean, I would run through the house ringing that bell. My parents have never been so excited about a gift. And they were really stressed out, because they said they had to talk and talk and talk, because they said, Dawn, you can't be a fireman. Why? Because you're a girl. They are firemen. Well, what can I be? A nurse or a teacher? I mean, they just didn't have it in their heads that I could, but I want to be a fireman. No, well, I showed them. I became a shrink and put out emotional fires every day. Well, I used to tell this story about this little boy and this dream as I traveled around. I told it for years and years because it was one of the first organizations that I actually ever had the honor and privilege of working with. And then about 4 years ago, I got a letter, and it said, "Dear Miss Billings, please call this number Bobby." Now, I've worked with thousands of children, and I have to tell you there are quite a few named Bobby, so I had no idea who this must be. But if he's going to write me a letter and say, "Please call this number Bobby," I'm certainly going to call it back. So I called him back and I said, "Hi, this is Don Billings," and he said, "You called?" And I said, "Yes, of course." And he goes, "I know you won't remember me, but you taught me how to dream." I said, "Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Where?" And he said, "I was a foster kid." And he said, "My name is Bobby, and I had a dream of being a Denver Bronco." I was like, "Oh my gosh, you're my Denver Bronco. Do you know how many times I've told your story?" I said, "Why are you calling me?" I said, "Are you going to be a Denver Bronco?" And he said, "Get out of here. You knew I was never going to be big enough to be a Denver Bronco." But I received my letter of acceptance into medical school. The parents that you met adopted me. I've had an extraordinary life. I went from a flunking child to a thriving, a life. And he said, "I'm not going to be a Denver Bronco, but I'm going to be a sports doctor, and I'm going to take care of the Denver Broncos."